Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for July 21st, 2023. I'm going to begin with a few headlines and then I'll get to a couple of the questions I received from our viewers. Let's start with the coordinated effort that's coming out of the City of London to do a pep talk on the Ukraine war, to try to overcome the problems that emerged, the cracks in NATO that emerged at the Vilnius summit. What we're seeing is a major spinning effort coming from top officials of the British Empire. First, we had Sir Richard Moore, who's the current director of MI6. He gave a speech in Prague where he essentially said the Russian special military operation is running out of steam. Ukraine is moving ahead. It's a slow slog, but it's gaining. Time is on our side. Russia is collapsing. There are, quote, cracks, unquote, appearing in Putin's government. And he called for the Russian defectors to, quote, join hands with us. So this was obviously part of a coordinated pep talk when you hear what the oddly named James Cleverly, the British Foreign Secretary, had to say at the Aspen Security Forum. Same line, Ukraine is winning. Cracks are appearing in Putin's regime. He said, we have to stick to the war, quote, until this is done. So two top officials of the British government pushing the same line. What they're showing is the only policy they have is to continue the war, and that the intent of the war has nothing to do with Ukraine. It has everything to do with breaking the government in Russia, breaking up the Russian Federation, and moving in to loot a weakened Russia. That's their goal. That's been the goal from not just 2022, but from 1991. The eastward expansion of NATO was predicated on the idea of destroying Russia as a potential future adversary. Now, at the same time you have these pep talks, you have the emergence of voices expressing a fear that it might not work. And the voices are being heard in the Economist magazine, a City of London publication originally founded by the Rothschilds. They have an article, quote, what if China and India become friends, unquote. They're talking about how trade and investment between the two countries are growing, that the attempt to pit India against China may not succeed. Oh no, what if peace breaks out? That's the essential theme coming from the Economist article. There's another couple of articles in the Economist expressing another fear. What if Trump gets elected in 2024? What would that mean? Would it mean that the United States would become pro-Russia? Would the United States end the commitment to the green policy? And several other aspects. What about an industrial policy for the United States? Now, keep in mind that the City of London produced in December 2018 a report by the House of Lords, which essentially said Trump must not be reelected in 2020. So we see again the fear that a resurgent United States breaking out from the special relationship and breaking away from the unipolar order policy, which has been the policy since 1991, that this is the greatest fear of the British. Well, that's a good thing for them to be afraid of, and we have to make sure that the changes do take place. Now, let me get to your questions. First one, actually, a couple wrote about Biden mumbling during his meeting with the Israeli president, seeming to fall asleep. Why are the Democrats sticking with Biden? Is there a plan B for them? Look, let's avoid getting into scenarios and speculation. It's clear Biden is not mentally competent for the job as president. But who is on the Democratic side? The problem is that the Democrats and the Republicans are so committed to this idea of protecting the unipolar order that the only alternatives they have to Biden are more of the same. If you look at the Republican side, DeSantis, Hawley, Nikki Haley, they're pro-war. You look at the Democratic side, what do you have? Harris. So they have no good options. In fact, what they fear is what would happen if there's an insurgent campaign of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Trump. And of course, with Trump, what you see is one legal case after another to knock him out. The point is, instead of being spectators, we have to be engaged in the process of educating the American people so they will not accept a lesser of evils. They will not accept the same game. Now, that is not wedded to any particular candidate. It has to be based on policy. And I'll come back to that in a moment when I talk about the plans for the August 6th demonstrations. But instead of getting caught up in these scenarios, which is what they want you to do, and get involved in all of the identity politics connected to the scenarios, let's build a movement that's committed to the idea of the United States as a force in the world for one humanity. Now, the second question is, what's the latest in Germany? We keep hearing horror stories about German industrial collapse. The German government is obviously incompetent. The German government is not defending its people. Someone wrote, how come there's no discussion of the Nord Stream pipeline bombing in Germany? Well, the polls are saying it all in Germany. The three coalition partners, the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Free Democrats, are in a falling state of collapse. They are less than, or they average around 40% support, which is not a majority by any means. The one party that's surging is the Alternative for Deutschland, which has been written off by most people as too far right-wing, an anti-immigrant party. But just as we see with the Kennedy insurgency in the United States and Trump, what the media says about it is different. What it expresses is a dissatisfaction with the existing choices. And what we'll see in Germany, there are warnings about a brutal winter coming up, a lack of energy, a lack of electricity, new round of inflation in the Eurozone, poverty, hunger, fear of rampant immigration. Essentially, they're trying to use the fears to convince people you have to stick with the devil you know, whether it's Macron, whether it's Meloni, whether it's Schultz. But we're seeing cracks in that. The question is, will NATO disintegrate? Can the EU be broken up? And is there a possibility for sovereign nations working together in Europe outside of the framework of the European Union? And so far in Germany, that's not emerged. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of angst and nervousness, but so far there's been no major shift, except as we see in the polls, a gradual decline of the ruling coalition in the absence of any alternative. Now, the next question came from, again, a number of people asking for an update on the plans for the demonstrations on August 6th. Now, August 6th is the commemoration date of the bombing by the United States, the dropping of a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima at the end of World War II. The decision was made to have a coalition of groups hold a demonstration at the United Nations from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on that day. More than 20 groups are involved. The Schiller Institute is one of them. We'll have several speakers, I think, there. And the demands for this demonstration are what I think is important and should become a rallying point for people who want to end this war and move toward a new strategic architecture. So the demands are, number one, immediate end of funding and weapons to Ukraine. It's obvious. As long as the NATO countries continue to supply arms to Ukraine, the lunatics in Kiev will continue to send their citizens to their death. This must stop, and it stops when governments pull the plug on the supply line. Secondly, point number two, immediate unconditional peace talks. This is what has been proposed by the Vatican, by Lula, by Erdogan of Turkey, by the Chinese, that with no preconditions, that the two sides sit down to meet and discuss without pressure from the outside. And what this means is going back to the original agreement that came up in March of 2022, which was sabotaged by NATO. But again, unconditional talks to end the fighting. 3, dissolution of NATO. NATO has no purpose other than to enforce the unipolar order. The NATO policy goes against the interests of the sovereign nations of Europe, were they sovereign, goes against the interests of the people of Europe, and it's defending Europe from what? Meanwhile, the NATO elite are planning to extend NATO worldwide, what we've been calling global NATO, with the Quad, the AUKUS agreement, the attempt to prepare NATO for a war with China in the Pacific. Instead, dissolve it. In 1991, the Warsaw Pact was shut down peacefully. Instead, NATO was not only kept in place, but it moved eastward. And each decade, it's moved closer and closer till now it's got troops and military capabilities on the borders of Russia. When it was promised by George H.W. Bush by the other leaders of the West, there would be no eastward expansion of NATO. So instead of stopping the expansion, let's shut down NATO completely. And the fourth point rather, is the construction of a new international security architecture. And the Schiller Institute view is that the only way that succeeds is to connect it to a development architecture. Now, as I said, there are more than 20 organizations involved in this. The main demonstration will be in New York City, but you can do whatever you want, wherever you are. Use that period between August 6th and August 9th to express your unhappiness, your dissatisfaction with the present policies of your governments, and to rally people toward this higher peace order. And that's what the August 6th event should be. So instead of falling prey to the psychological babblings of the Bidens and the Sunaks and the Cleverleys and the Richard Moore, look at reality. Reality is we're heading toward a danger of nuclear war, a danger of global financial collapse. And unless we break out of this geopolitical realm, there's no solution. So join us. Essentially, the idea is put an end to geopolitics and move to the condition where the human race recognizes that we all have common interests and common needs. And let's start from there and negotiate for a peaceful order for the future. Thanks for joining me this week. Spread this message. Use the link below in the description page to organize for the August 6th events.
Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.